Hey team, welcome back to another great episode of the Intentional Agribusiness Leader Podcast. This is your host, Mark Jewell. Welcome to 2025. We are in it, and today I've got a really great guest on here for you. This is someone who has been a client. I'm proud to call a friend now after the last several years of getting to know him and getting to work with Doug. Doug Welbig is the what do you say, VP of Agronomy or Director of Agronomy at Stateline Cooperative in Iowa. And you guys are in for a treat today, guys, because Doug is somebody who's been working really hard with this team to curate a great environment within which people can thrive. And I know firsthand, because we get to work with his people, I get to work with him, and I know the background, I know the story. So Doug, welcome to the show, man.
Well, thank you for having me on, Mark. It's really an honor to be able to sit here and visit with you today.
Yeah, it's going to be awesome. Hey, so first question everybody gets, man, what does it mean for you to be intentional?
As I take a look at what it is to be intentional, really what comes to my mind is having that end goal in mind. What is it you're really looking for? But not so much that, but just backing away from that. What's it all take to achieve that? What's the process? What's the
Yeah.
purpose
Yeah.
of that goal? And is it the right purpose? And how are you going to get there? And then as you make your plans, as you put your thought process to it, making sure you're being thorough in that, so
Mhm.
so you can achieve the goal it is that you want.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so important, I mean, it's the old Covey 7 habits, right? Begin with the end in mind. But and that's important, but also like being able to work that problem backwards. If there's something I've struggled with, my brain just doesn't work that way. I have to surround myself with people that are capable of helping me see all the steps. My optimistic brain just automatically goes to, oh, that's the end result. Of course we're going to get there. No
And
problem, right?
and even part of that is evaluating, is that the right end goal in mind?
Yeah,
Is that
it's
really
great.
truly what it is, or is it actually something else you should be achieving, and that's just a step along the way?
Yeah,
Making sure we're thinking big enough, long term
yeah,
enough.
yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
is it just a goal that gets you one step closer, or what's that end goal and back in step two? So
Yeah, yeah. Well, as we record this, it's the beginning of the year. Uh, Many people have created goals. Many people have already failed on those. But hopefully people are moving forward and being intentional with the goals. It's such an interesting process and really challenging process. And one thing that you really nailed there, Doug, was, are your goals even big enough? Are they the right goals? Are you challenging yourself to the level that you could? Because I'll be honest, most aren't. I think most people are not very intentional with the way that they go about setting goals or outcomes or desired future states or whatever it is that you want to label it. Some people seem to be triggered by the word goals these days, and I'm just like, hey, listen. At the end of the day, I mean, sit down and the good Lord says, asking you shall receive, right? Knocking, the door will be open to you. So know what you're asking for and ask with some specificity.
well, that's what, like you say, it is the beginning of the new year, and so it's that time for that goal setting process. But as I've been giving it thought here the past few weeks,
Mhm.
um, I've really come to realize it's not just jumping to that, figuring out what that goal is, but that reflection on where you're at, how the last year went, evaluating where it is I'm at and where it is I truly want to be, and then figuring out, okay, what goals
Mhm.
align with that as a step process, right? Because you make your goal too big, well, now it's not achievable. But
Yeah,
maybe I can set that goal that's a step to
true.
that real big end goal, and
Yeah,
break it down so that you can start working through the process.
yeah. You're reminding me as you say that. Christine, you've got a chance to work with my wife through some of our executive coaching work, and Christine recently put myself and some of our clients through an exercise towards the end of the year as a reflective exercise to reflect on 24 and see where we wanted to go in 2025. Uh, Before we reflected on what we wanted to do, she had us spend time, invest actual time, like 20, 25 minutes, jotting down first, just making a list of all the things that we were actually grateful for in the current year, right? And the intention behind that part of the exercise was to put you into a mental state of thinking about what actually went well, and to create goals that allow you to capitalize on the momentum. Because what most of us do, right, is we actually set goals based on what's not working, what we're reacting to right now, what somebody's griping about, the squeaky wheels getting the grease. And so we start to, and that's why I think where often our goals get off track. Not that those things don't need to be addressed, but it gets it gets the lion's share of our mental bandwidth, and so we focus on those, even though maybe the actual goals or the outcomes that we should be pursuing would be better informed if we focused on some gratitude first.
Yeah, build on the positive, not the negative, right?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So, Doug, before we get too far into it on this, it's a great conversation already, but talk to me a little bit, talk to us a little bit. Tell us about you. Tell us a little bit about your background. What do you do at Stateline? And let's start
So
with that.
yeah, so currently I'm the agronomy sales and marketing director for the company. So in a nutshell, what that is I lead the sales team for Stateline Cooperative and figure out how is our go-to-market strategy. And a little bit about my background. Grew up on a small family farm, crops in South Dakota, corn, soybean, farrow to finish hogs. So
Hmm.
lots of labor, right? Or
Yep.
labor and very intensive. And grew up, went to college. Right out of college, got going into retail ag. Spent a little bit time outside of retail ag and more of the cooperative uh, corporate
Hmm.
uh,
Yep.
ag businesses, and then came back to Stateline in this current role. So um, I guess I I like having that direct connection with the customer, with the farmer. Um, I also, you know, retail ag can be a challenging uh, business to be in.
Yeah.
There's plenty of competition, but at the end of the day, it's really being still close to that farmer and able to um, really see the differences you can make with good, sound recommendations. You're partnering with your customer.
Hmm.
Uh, Farming was going back to the family farm wasn't an option for me.
Hmm.
Just didn't have a large enough operation that was something viable. And
Yep.
so being in retail ag, getting to partner with our customers is my way that I get to farm.
Yeah.
And you see and live in the successes, and it's really gratifying to share in that after
That's
such a
awesome.
career.
That's awesome. I love that that's what drives you, right? You know, there's an intentional reason for being there. This isn't accidental by any stretch of the imagination, which is great. You know, Doug, one of the things that I've admired about what you've done since you took that role, since you and I met, you know, I mean, you inherited um, some work when you took over that team, right?
Yeah.
And today, you know, you've taken a big group of salespeople. I don't know, you got 18 or 20, you know, or so there on your team, been able to successfully split those into a couple of regions, delegate out some of that leadership and responsibility, and you've done a really intentional job of curating that. I want to ask this question first. So what has driven you to make those decisions that you have for the team? First of all, let's just start with that. Like what is it that goes through Doug's mind when you're thinking about, okay, how do I get my hands around this problem? And then you created what you created. It's working really well. Talk to us a little bit about like what goes through Doug's mind as you're putting that all together.
That's right. There as I worked through the process, there was a time, there's just certain things that we needed addressed. As I take a look at it, um, one of the things is I took a look at it from being a retail agronomist is a challenging role for anybody.
Mm-hmm.
Even and that job has evolved over time, right? So when I got into it, 25 years ago, what did you have to be an expert in to provide good service to your customers, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
not near the amount of stuff that the person entering that role today has to be successful,
Mm-hmm.
right? Seed traits have come on, herbicide tolerances, um, precision agriculture. When I got into this was relatively new. So I got to benefit from learning all this stuff as it was being developed. Where somebody coming into this field today, their customer expects them to be an expert day one type of
Yeah.
deal. And
Yeah.
as I take a look and evaluate at that role, being at the ag retail agronomist, sales agronomist role, it just floored me of how can we make something that that person can succeed in and
Mm-hmm.
achieve those expectations right from the get-go. So um, as I really took a look at what's going to drive a successful team there, it
Mm-hmm.
really led me to believe, how do I structure that role into a way that enables somebody to be successful in it that doesn't already have 20 years of
Yeah.
experience?
Yeah.
And so it really led me to have that end goal in mind
Yep.
and back up into it of, hey, this is the support system. This is a structure I believe will enable that team to
Mm-hmm.
succeed.
Yeah.
And and that's what we've been able to do here
Yeah.
is put that structure to work
Mm-hmm.
and build that structure within our team and provide that. And we just started that 20 months ago,
Mm-hmm.
24 months ago. And um, I just I'm every day I'm in awe of how much that changes things, how much
Yeah.
change that actually made.
Wow. I want to unpack that a little bit, but first of all, I think you may. I have 120 episodes that I've recorded on this podcast now. You may have framed up that specific problem better than anybody. So well done, you know, on that, and also great job and with the level of intentionality that you have put into thinking about the problem so that you can articulate it so well, and then actually go about working that problem backwards and thinking about, okay, how are we going to go about solving that? And this is all part of the process. And this is the one thing I want to say to the other leaders listening in right now. Maybe you're not in retail specifically, maybe you are, maybe you're in a different part of the business. Maybe you're in one of these agronomy sales roles and thinking about, how would I do this, or how could my boss be doing this better? Send him or her this podcast, as Doug and I kind of break this problem down right now. But it's really important that you actually block time to sit and think about your problems. The nature of the world that we all live in today is we are running from one problem to the next problem to the next problem to the next problem to the next problem. And we don't actually really take time to sit down and think, should I actually be solving this problem to begin with, or should I just cut the dang thing? Right? And cut my losses and move on and go focus on things that actually have a greater ROI on my time. You know, I was looking at on my Google Calendar, it shows me how many hours of meetings I have each week. And so I was looking at my average on the weeks last year, and I've got it down by 25% so far going into this year, which is one of my goals. I want fewer meetings, more white space, right? Shorter meetings. Why do we have to block an hour every time there's a meeting? Sometimes a 15-minute phone call is all we need, right? And sometimes not even that. So I just been playing around with that so that I can get more white space back on my calendar, so that I can be more intentional for the podcast. I can be more intentional for my teammates, and so on and so forth, right? Anyway, enough of me, Doug. I want to just dive back into this. So you're talking a little bit at right there at the end about how things like you looking back and being impressed with how much has changed. Can you give us one or two like specific changes that you've made that have helped and that are now manifesting and a part of your culture?
So, yeah, so when I evaluated that that problem and really, with the end goal of how do we create an environment that allows our employees, our salespeople, our staff in general to succeed, right? I need to
Mm-hmm.
enable them. I need to give them the resources, to give them the ability to do that. So as I took a look at our current structure, um, when I was evaluating that problem, I was like, we don't have the right structure in mind.
Mm-hmm.
So we took a very intentional thing and said, okay, we are changing our structure. And a
Yep.
lot of times, um, I was scared, right as we did it, I'll be honest with you. I said it, the words came out of my mouth, when my boss came to me and says, well, if you were to do it right from the beginning, forget where we're at and do it right, what would
Mm-hmm.
that look like? And I didn't give it any thought, and the words just spilled out of my mouth. Well, you'd structure it this way. Okay, do that.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what do you mean do that? I can't just do that. That's not who we are. Well, no, that sounds good. Do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it made changes,
Right.
and then you had to work with the rest of your team to say, no, no team really likes change,
Mm-hmm.
but had to be able to communicate that effectively so that everyone could understand um, why that change and how
Yeah.
that change is going to work and foresee that change so that when you make the change, it can be a successful change.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Well, want to stop you there and we'll keep going. But first of all, kudos to Bill for giving the autonomy to do the right thing. Right. So that's a good CEO letting you just go do what needs to be done and getting out of the way a little bit. Also, I want to touch back on something that you said is that I was scared, right? When the words fell out of my mouth, I was like, I had a little one of those like, those oh crap moments. Like, oh man, like what did I just say? Or did I really just say that? Right. I mean, and those are scary moments too, because it's like, and I just wanted to touch on that because good leadership, intentional leadership, is rarely comfortable,
mhm,
right? I think a lot of people are looking for the comfortable solution, but if we keep making comfortable solutions, nothing's really changing, right? We're just doing new things and creating busy work for ourselves.
mhm.
So that's good. What as you communicated that to your team, right? You mentioned, I mean, we're often hesitant to want to change. We get that. Everybody deals with that. Well, how did you roll that out? How did you cast the vision? How did you get this sold?
Um, there just there was definitely a lot of thought into that from the time the words fell out of my mouth until you kind of create this plan and okay, now you
Right.
really get, okay, we're really going to do this, right? So
Yeah.
we're really understanding why, really getting, okay, this is why, and almost building that certainty, right?
Mm-hmm.
You
Mm-hmm.
gotta, even though I said it and I believed what I said, I really had to understand and you know, be certain of myself, be certain of the plan so that I could communicate that level of certainty to the team.
Mm-hmm.
And
Sure.
um, I think that had a lot to do with it, then as you come across, we're a cooperative, so I had to report that to the board, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Um, had to get basically their approval first, and then all of a sudden it's rolling it out to the team.
Yep.
Um, and then, bringing in the people that it's going to affect the most and making sure you, or, to communicate to them, hey, this is what we're planning on doing. And better yet, this is why.
Mm.
This is
Yeah.
the benefits. This is what we expect to see out of this. This is the reason we're doing it. And a lot of it, and a lot of it just goes to because it's the right thing to do, right? It enables, we're going to be bringing more resources to you. We're going to be, it's the benefits. How does this, I guess, basically communicating how this affects the people it's going to affect.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And understanding that, because there's going to be those questions, and that's the concerns that they have. That's where change is scary. So if you have a better
Right.
understanding of, hey, what's the forecast? What with this change, what should my expectations of the
Mm-hmm.
result of this change be?
Sure.
The more people can be comfortable with that, I think the more accepting they're going to be
Yeah.
of the change. If
Yep. Roger that. Did you have any like major pushback as you went through it?
looking back on it, I feel the whole process went smoother than what I expected.
Mm,
Um, yes, there was pushback. Yes, there was plenty of questions, right?
yeah.
What do we need to make that change for? Well, this isn't how we do things, right?
Right. Right. Right.
But um now after the fact, it didn't feel like it was that hard once, but it was
Mm-hmm.
definitely a lot of evaluation and a lot of thought, and once I got through that process and said, you know what? Okay, here we go. We're doing it. The pieces tend to fall in, pieces just tend to fall in place then.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I think it was a result of being very intentional to what it was we were doing,
Yeah.
and up front that enabled the process to go smoother at through the process.
Yep. Yep. One of my I have a three-word definition, my personal definition of what it means to be intentional, and the first word in that list is that it has to be deliberate. Right? If it's to be intentional, it's got to be deliberate, and which means you hopefully took time to deliberate, right, on the decision. And I think when you actually do that, it gives you as a leader, I believe this is what you did. Um, it allows you to show up with a greater level of certainty in the conversations. So when you're leading the team meetings, when you're leading the change, right, you're like, this isn't something I just came up with on the back of the napkin while I was sitting at the diner, right? At the coffee shop, at the gas station, right? Like, oh, I think this will work. No, like you actually put time into it, and real thought and effort. People are always going to fight change. We're
Mhm.
always going to, I mean, just look at the climate. We have the should be the easiest climate for political change in America that we've ever had, at least in recent memory. And still, right, there will be fighting, right? It's in our human nature, so we have to be aware of that. But man, intentional leadership goes a long ways to do it. So great job. Functionally speaking, you took, if I remember right, you took like what, 18 people, one big team that you had to oversee, manage all those relationships, structurally kind of split that down the middle, hired a couple of regional sales managers. Well, any is that accurate? And are there
Yep.
any other structural things or other changes
Yep.
that you guys made?
So a lot of what we did is we took, I think at the time we had, um, yeah, I I had about 16 direct reports, a large percentage of them being retail sales agronomists, and we actually reduced the number of sales agronomists by a couple, and we split it into two regions and added two regional sales agronomy managers that that each have basically 4 to 5 direct sales agronomists under them.
Yep.
And so now there's only 3 people in our team that direct report, or I only have direct supervision over. And then um, each of the regional agronomists have 4 to 5 direct reports as well. So a lot more manageable number. If you look at the military, I think that's what they say is,
Sure.
no person should have more direct reports than basically just a handful too. So
Yep. Yep. I think that's right. Well, that's great. Yeah, so has that been then how you're driving the technical training aspect of things? Because one of the problems you
Right.
mentioned early on is how do we help newbies or new people, younger people take on the level of knowledge they're expected to carry? So has that helped tackle that problem?
Yes, it has. Just by having, you know, I love no more than to coach and be a mentor for other agronomists, right? But
Yep.
with 16, 17 direct reports, I didn't have the ability to.
Yeah. Yeah.
And as I looked at that, I mean, that was part of the problem, right? And so now when you only have 4 to 5, that enables a lot more of that coaching and
Mhm.
mentorship and just overall resource
Yep.
in being available.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. I love it. All
You
right.
know,
So, oh, yeah, go ahead.
I go through this thing and I really have a true deep down belief that everyone that shows up at work, goes to work every day, they want nothing more than to do a good job at
Hmm.
work, to
Yeah.
contribute, to have a successful career. Um, as leaders in any business, I think it's our duty to ensure we're providing them a structure, space, an ability to achieve that.
Yeah.
Um, and that's what I and we need to enable them to do a good job.
Well, it's like I say, I think as leaders, we have a moral obligation to create an environment within which people can thrive,
Yes,
right?
yes.
And if,
And if we don't have the right environment, that's where we need to make changes.
yeah,
And I
yep,
feel that's what we've been able to do.
yeah, I love it. Good stuff, man. You've grown a lot. You've been a part of our summit program, executive, which is one of our executive coaching offers, and you've made some investments, obviously, in your team. But I want to focus more on how has personal professional growth for Doug been important on your journey these last couple of years?
Um, I still remember the first time you and I met. I was at one of your Thriving Leader
Yep.
events, and and you you said, okay, hey, I need a guy that needs to share something with the group
Yeah.
here, right?
Yeah. Yep.
And at that time, that was right when I was in this current role for a little while, but I was I've been a sales agronomist basically my entire career up to that point.
Mm-hmm.
And and natural progression, right? You take job advances and eventually you find yourself in a leadership role.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I really didn't think like I had any official leadership training. And so
Mm-hmm.
here I am thrown in this role and I was like, you know what? I feel like I was really good at being an agronomist as a sales agronomist,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm unsure of myself about being a leader.
Sure.
And and since then, working with you and really thinking more about that and reading books and everything else, it wasn't that I didn't know how to be a leader. I just didn't feel confident in my abilities.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the biggest transition I've made in this
Yeah.
journey. And even just doing this structure change has has solidified, that that built my confidence in being a leader.
Yeah. So just to distill that down, Doug, I'm going to say so that actually what you're actually saying is that the mindset component, who you become, is actually more important than what you know.
Yes.
Which you and I know each other. Not everybody else knows this, but I get so frustrated with frankly our buyers who come to us saying, "I need training on name the business problem of the day." Salespeople aren't closing. They're not asking for business. They're not prospecting enough. They're people aren't responding. People aren't communicating. We need communications training, whatever the thing is, right? And those things are all table stakes. That's all relevant. And by the way, you can go get free training on YouTube for all of that stuff right now. Just go Google it. Right? Like that stuff is out there. It is free in the world today. It has all been put out there. I mean, you can go get negotiations training from Chris Voss, who, book recommendation of the day. It's been on the show before, but never split the difference. I mean, I could teach negotiations training, or do negotiations training, but you can get it from Chris Voss, who is an FBI hostage negotiator, basically for free if you read his book, and you can or go buy the master class for like $130 per year for the whole membership, right? Get that for everybody in your company that sells something. I think that's what people should do. I'm not here to say like I think you need to use us and buy my $5,000 program just so people can hopefully become better negotiators. I'm not the best one in the world to teach it. We aren't. But my point with all this is, so much of your growth has just been belief in self. Doug's self-belief has grown dramatically over the last 24 months since he started doing these things, and last 2.5 years since you and I have known each other. And so, and that really right there, that's the biggest difference, right? Like I'm just talking to a more certain version of Doug than I am. Are there practical and pragmatic things that you have done? 100%, absolutely. But I like I said, one of the things that frustrates me, with the way that people think about developing their cultures is we think it's got to be just practical, tactical. We need training on these things, and I think my belief is that intentional leaders are actually curating those environments within which their people can thrive. They're creating intentional cultures, and that requires more training along the lines of helping their people become that next best version of themselves, which you guys have invested heavily in your teams to do just that, invested in your culture to do just that. And from compared to where we were a couple of years ago, like I mean, Stateline is thriving.
Yeah. Yeah. That's where, yeah, not only do you need the structure, but just all components of that. I mean, it's as we built that, it's just what is sacred. Keep it in mind what's sacred. Working together as a team, not having a bunch of individuals work at Stateline.
Yeah.
That was sacred. There are certain things that I just felt was sacred. Being customer service, being of utmost importance. Is sacred. So how do we build this? How do we structure this? How do we interact on a day-to-day basis and keep that at the forefront? But like, you brought up culture, and that's been a huge thing. As I take a look at what is culture, it's not just a tagline that gets adopted, right? Not just a slogan that a company has, but when I think of culture, I think of, okay, what's at the core? What
Mm-hmm.
what do we truly believe in? Because really culture is how do you automatically react on a split second? That's what
Mm-hmm.
culture is.
Come on.
And we got to think about culture too. How we structure things, how we go about, how we react. Every time you have a reaction, somewhat kind of defines the culture, right? It's a result of the culture, but it also
Mm-hmm.
uh, it also drives the culture or whatever, or it solidifies it, I guess.
Yeah.
And so um, I think that's highly important. Most
Yeah.
most of the time being a sales agronomist in ag retail, these guys and gals are out having very challenging conversations or get put on the spot when they're by themselves, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
It's them out there driving the business. It's them out there having the conversations. It's them out there um, addressing problems out in the field. Um, whether it's being environment or something happened, it's these challenges that they're always facing, right? They have to do it themselves. But but how can they also be a part of a team, right? Where's their what where's their ability to bounce ideas off of others? The
Mm-hmm.
sounding board, the hey, I just need to vent.
Yeah.
You know, it was a challenging day. I just need to vent. Or, hey, communicating with their peer? Are you are you seeing the same thing, right? So to me here at Stateline, it's very important that team structure is mandatory. It's a
Mm-hmm.
must. It's a part of our culture.
Yeah.
So when we were building this structure, that was a big thing that
Mm-hmm.
was sacred,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So
That's great. I love the way you frame it out, right? I mean, culture is what happens in an instant, right?
yes,
When we get squeezed.
when you get
Ab-
squeezed, what comes out, that's your culture.
yep. Yep, absolutely. Man, this has been great. I really actually wish we had more time to go and we're just back to back today, but man, this is a great resource and I know that it's going to benefit some people. So, Doug, thanks for being on. Thanks for doing the show.
Thank you for having me. It's been an honor.